Today, I have the opportunity to welcome back to campus, at least virtually, one of my favorite students, and certainly someone who's gone on after graduation, most recently, to develop a name for himself in sports reporting and also in news journalism. But I want to read something. I'm going to make you blush before we get started. The person who was your internship advisor at CNN Bay Area, Comcast Sports Bay Area, wrote this about you in 2016. Keanu demonstrated a great knowledge of sports. He was reliable and dependable. He sought multiple opportunities outside of his required duties, learned the company's way of doing things, and always asked to do more. He was a terrific intern.
Oh, man.
Keanu, that was one of the best reviews I've ever seen. Congratulations. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well, hanging in there. COVID's probably hit our TV industry the hardest. Ironically, the person who wrote that, I work with him now over at NBC Sports. Currently furloughed, though, just because, we've been having so many cutbacks from having no fans in the stands, having no sports for several months, which was really tough. So we haven't seen anything like it, and our industry's dealing with it, but it's been for sure difficult.
Very good. And while we're talking about your background, I'm looking at your resume. Very quickly, just walk me through some of the things you've done.
Yeah, well, back when I was in undergrad, one thing I really wanted to do was take on a lot of internships. I wanted to learn all the different jobs that entail in our industry. I know it's not just being on talent, even though when I first came to San Jose State, that's really what I was focused on, becoming talent, getting on camera, becoming famous. I think most people, when they enter this field, that's probably their goal. But I went on to learn, production is there's more production jobs out there than talent jobs, and there's so much going on behind the scenes. So, for example, I actually came to that internship at NBC Sports, CSN formerly. That was my first real experience in the real world of TV, and it was so fun just being able to see a newsroom for the first time, seeing how everything works. I was an intern, so I did a lot of logging, so I didn't know even what logging was, but every single game we're logging footage. We're trying to make it easier for the associate producers to find their clips, throw it into their shows. So that was my first real experience. I got to cover a Raiders game, to sit in a press box for the first time ever. That was a really cool experience being at 18, 19 years old. That was awesome. And then I moved on to news because when I came into your class, I remember you told me you're really into sports, but I want you to try out hard news. And I never even gave hard news like a single thought, like not one thought. I came into your office that one day. You gave me Miss Sidner's contact info because she came and spoke to our journalism department earlier in the year. And you gave me your contacts. I emailed her. And within 2 weeks, I found myself moving to Los Angeles for a summer and working at CNN, which was a great experience. So awesome. I got to learn how they cover, what they cover, how their coverage map is, how they operate essentially. And that was an awesome experience over at CNN. And then after, I did one more internship in 95.7 The Game. Got into the radio side, so I did a lot of TV stuff. It was all TV most of my undergrad. Then I wanted to do more radio stuff, see how that works. Another cool internship. Got to meet a lot of cool people. A lot of cool Bay Area media came into that office. And then eventually went to Syracuse for grad school in one of the top journalism schools in the nation in Newhouse. And that was an amazing experience. But over there, unlike San Jose State, where I was more focused on being on camera, I focused a lot of production there. And I got to produce my own shows for the ACC Network Extra. The ACC Network just launched this year. So over there in Syracuse, they were doing a little beta run with the students, and everything was student run, the talent, the production. We just had our professors look over it. And that was an amazing experience, being able to work in a real life like newsroom, produce your own shows, build your rundowns in iNews. That was a great experience. So most of my experience does come from a TV production background, but while I was in San Jose State, focused on keying in on anything I could when I had the time.
Very good. We had a little bit of a delay in the last part of your sentence there, but we got the gist of your background. Very impressive. You've been very busy since you graduated in 2018, and then you got your master's in broadcast and digital journalism with an emphasis on sports communications at Syracuse, an excellent program, the Newhouse program, certainly nationally known. So hopefully that future is going to take off for you, but COVID-19 and all these issues in this year of 2020 is going to continue to present challenges. Let's go back though to when I met you and you were in my diversity and media class. Talk a little bit about the way you identified your culture in that class. And there was one particular story about your family traveling to the Middle East I'd like you to talk about.
Yeah. So like, before I even came to your class, I wasn't really the kind of guy to really participate in class unless I was motivated to. And right off the bat, right away, you were telling us you better speak every single day we're in this class. And I was like, oh God. And us students, we talk a little bit, we talk. And so when I heard that I had Professor Rucker as my diversity professor, people were like, oh man, he's hard. He's hard. He's old fashioned. And I got a little nervous. Enter that class, one of the best classes I took at San Jose State. I participated so much often. I was so motivated to. And to answer your question, I identify as Iranian American. And I don't remember, I think there's maybe one other Middle Eastern person in our class. I don't remember. But I remember I was definitely in the minority for that culture that I identified as. And the story that I think you were alluding to was one time I was going back from Turkey, I believe. This was about 2013, 2015. It was 2015. I was coming back from Turkey for a visit with my family. Just went on vacation there. I come back from Turkey, and I remember this vividly because I'm a big Golden State Warriors fan, and it was Game 6 of the 2015 NBA Finals, the day I was flying back to America. And so that was the game where the Warriors clinched the NBA championship. But I missed like the first 3 quarters of the game because I remember I landed the plane, and you go through customs and immigration whenever you come back into the country. And I thought it was like a really straightforward process. I never really had to deal with any issues there. Usually I got in and I got out. But this time was a little different. And I remember when I get into immigration first, guy stamps my passport, and then they tell me to wait off to the side. A little confused. I was like, why do I gotta wait off to the side? And then I noticed that they're starting to take me into like this detention room or interview room, and my mom starts getting like really concerned. I don't blame her. It's with our culture, being in around airports, it's not that we're doing anything wrong. It's just ever since 9/11, really, there's been kind of this underlying stress of being in an airport and being Middle Eastern. You kind of just get looks and it's different. Didn't really have to deal with it a lot before this moment, but I go into the detention room. They ask me, have you ever been to this country? This country is listing off Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Yemen. And then eventually he goes, have you been to Iran ever? I'm like, yes, I've been to Iran twice because I'm visiting family there. That's back when it was easier to get over there as an American citizen. And I say, yeah, I've been to Iran. And he asked me, have you been to this? What cities have you been to? And we were visiting a lot of cities. So I name off a lot of cities. They said, what are you doing there? What was your activity there? And I said, oh, I'm just visiting my family. I've never seen them before in my life until I went to Iran because they're not living here. And so answer those questions. I get out of that interview room after about 30, 45 minutes of them asking me questions. And then I get to customs. They're checking your luggage, everything, what you brought in, what you're declaring. And again, they're going through my luggage again. The guy opens up my luggage, takes pretty much everything out of my luggage. And this is like a lot of luggage, right? 2-3 weeks in Turkey. It's a lot of stuff in there. So he takes out all my stuff and he starts asking me questions like, what do you do in America? I'm a student at San Jose State University. What are you studying? I'm studying journalism and communications. What do you want to do with that? And they were just getting really like in detail trying to find out what I want to do. And it was a pretty stressful moment. Like even though I've done nothing wrong, I'm a law-abiding American citizen, it was just a really stressful atmosphere to be in. And so eventually I get through it all. They kept me there for an extra like hour and a half, 2 hours. It was a real hassle. My dad's just driving around SFO International Airport in circles and circles and circles, wondering what's going on. And so I get out of there eventually. But it was a very stressful moment. That was the first time I really felt like my culture kind of was used to describe me in a way, right, without getting to know me.
And I remember the class, when you told that story, their eyes were wide open. They were like, my goodness, you really mean they treated an American citizen like that? I think a lot of Americans still don't get the fact that there are issues internationally that directly affect cultures in this country. And sometimes it's just not safe to travel.
Yeah, of course. It definitely is the case. And I really didn't have too many issues like myself in airports. However, before, like when I traveled with my family, there were multiple instances where my parents were questioned. They were stopped. And because my passport says that I'm a U.S. citizen born in America, their passports say that they're U.S. citizens born in Iran. So, I mean, gives good reason maybe why they get questioned more than I do. But it's definitely there, and I think that psyche that a Middle Eastern person has in an airport, like it definitely exists, especially whenever I'm walking through TSA. Like I know I have nothing on me. I know I'm doing nothing wrong, but there's always just a little bit of added stress when you're just walking through that security. Just because I know friends, I know family who have been hassled in these airports before. And there was one instance that I talked to you about before when I was even younger. The first time I went to Iran, I was in LAX. I think it was LAX, and uh, we're about to board the plane. This is us. We're going to Iran again. This is my first time going to Iran. I was only like 10, 11 years old at the time, and we're about to board the plane. We passed security, everything. And we've been waiting at the gate for like an hour or so, whatever. We're about to board the plane, and as soon as we board the plane, these TSA officers stopped my family, and they asked, how much money are you guys carrying on you? Interesting question to ask. My mom, she said, I'm carrying like in cash on me right now, like about like whatever $8,000, because we're going off to Iran for a month, so and we're bringing dealing with business there too, so we're bringing some cash there. And the guy goes, "Do you mind if I count that money like right now?" Keep in mind,
Wow.
we're not in an interview room. We're not in like any secure area. We are literally at the gate. People are boarding as they pass us. My mom hands the bag. This guy on the ground as people are boarding the plane starts counting all the money in front of everybody. And I
Wow.
remember at the time, like I was young. It was hard for me kind of to process what was going on, but I still remember like really vividly to this day, just this guy counting all our money with people passing by and looking like, what the hell is going on over there?
Yeah,
And
it's
so that was
embarrassing.
just really, it was weird. Yeah. And it was also like, I don't want all these passengers to know how much money like my family's holding while we're taking this flight across the country. So just very, very weird experience.
Now, people watching this, of course, this is an educational video. They would say to you, "We're really sorry you had to go through that, but you do know, in the time period you're talking about, there was a great deal of tension in the world. There were
Yes.
terrorist attacks. Is that good enough an explanation for them to treat you like that?"
It's definitely not a good enough explanation. It's just because they're just profiling you based on your appearance, based off what your passport says. Like we're so many Middle Eastern people come over to this country and they're just the greatest minds. They come here to become doctors, to become engineers. They study really hard. Like both of my parents, they immigrated over from Iran. My mom came before the revolution. My dad came after the revolution, and they're both some of the smartest people I know. My mom worked at IBM for 25 years. My dad still works in tech, very smart minds. And just to kind of be like belittled to that level of, oh, you pose a threat to like airport security, it's insulting, honestly.
I'm sure it is. And it would be hurtful. And I'm sure your family deserves an apology. I don't know if they gave you one or not.
No, and I don't think one's coming anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, we're sorry that that happened to you. Someone should say that out loud.
Yeah, thank
Uh,
you.
let's move on into your career now, and sports, and certainly the year 2020 will always be remembered for COVID-19.
Yes.
How has it affected you first, personally, your family, and then how has it affected you in the business world in NBC Bay Area?
Yeah, it's definitely affected me a lot. So I used to be a production assistant before all this at NBC Sports Bay Area, and I was used to coming into work, 30 to 40 hours a week. I love my job. A lot of what I do is building graphics for our pre and post game shows, pitching ideas. It's a fun job. Working in sports is what I've wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. Like this was like my dream, and I was starting to get it going. And then COVID hits, and we start getting paid for like 2, 3 weeks after, because everyone's confused what's going on. This is the time in March where everyone was like, this is
Mhm.
just a little sickness going around. It'll be okay in a couple months. Little did we know. And so eventually, about 2, 3 weeks down the line, I get furloughed from work. So since about April, I've been furloughed from NBC Sports Bay Area, and we've taken a lot of cuts. Honestly, our talent's been laid off. We've had producers laid off. We've had directors laid off, and not just at NBC Sports Bay Area. Honestly, our cuts haven't even been as bad compared to like Chicago and Philadelphia and all these other regional sports networks of NBC. So, and it's not just NBC, everybody across the way. And right now, I'm looking for some other jobs right now too, just because we don't know when we're coming back. It's a very murky situation right now at NBC. And so, even when you look for jobs on LinkedIn, Indeed, all these job postings, there's not that many jobs available for associate level, experienced people. And for the jobs that are being posted for like associate producers and production assistants, you're getting like 200 plus applicants for every single job. It's like picking up
Wow.
a class at San Jose State. It's so impact like being a sophomore at San Jose State and trying to get your major classes. It's just so impacted, and it's so hard to get in. And I feel like I have a decently strong resume, to at least garner an interview. But sometimes you just don't even get them. You don't even hear anything back. And it's just because everyone wants a job. And I have, like I told you, I got that LinkedIn Premium just for this search right now. And I'm looking at the breakdowns of people applying. And there are entry and associate level positions. Every single one that I've looked at that I've been interested in, I've looked at, there's at least 10 to 15 director level applicants applying to
Wow.
entry level positions. Our industry is very, very impacted right now, and so it's pretty tough, not just in sports media but all media.
So the key question obviously is, well, why don't you just give up? Why don't you just forget about your dream, go out there and make some money and just do what you got to do?
I wish it was that easy, Bob, but I've just spent so much time. Like, this has been my dream, not since I was 17, 18 at San Jose State, like since I was like 5 or 6 years old. Like, I'd wake up every single morning. I'd wake up an hour earlier than I'm supposed to just so I could watch that first live edition of SportsCenter with my dad. And this is something I was doing since I was like 6, and I've been doing this like routine since till now, honestly. And it's just my passion. When you have a passion, it's just something you don't really want to give up towards. I'd rather be making way less money and doing something I absolutely love every day than making a ton of money and just hating my job. I've known that sports media has been my calling since I was. Right now probably is rock bottom, but you just got to keep your head up and plow through because there's light on the other side of the door, and you just got to keep going towards it.
Excellent advice. When I was coming through, there was no COVID-19, but even back in the good old days, it was very tough to get a job. And being a person of color also made it more challenging. And then being able to move around the country, the cultural values. Some people don't want to leave their families. I went through that conversation with my family. Why do you have to go out west when you grew up in Chicago? Why can't you get a job there?
Yep.
There's so many variables that go into the process of fulfilling your passion. But I commend you. Stay with it. You're very talented. You've got a lot to offer. We're going to take a look at some of your reporting in a minute, but I want to talk about your resume right now. Production assistant, it says, NBC Bay Area Sports, we talked about. Media relations assistant for the San Jose Sharks. Very quickly, what'd you do for them?
Yeah, so that was more like a game day gig. Picked it up actually after I got this NBC Sports gig. It's basically, helping the media out, passing out notes, passing out our the media notes to the media before the game, giving them breakdowns, giving the teams score breakdown, stat sheets during the intermissions, giving the referees their sheets and stuff like that. Basically, getting introduced to the world of like sports PR. It's different from what I've been doing with like production assistant that's working in production, working in TV. This is much different. This is working like for a team, and public relations very different from journalism. But it was really cool getting to learn like how the team deals with the media, how they communicate with the media, because it's very important to have a strong relationship with the media if you're a professional team. You want to get covered, you want to really help this media out, and you want to be known as like the team that really makes it easy for these guys to do their jobs. Because trust me, I've been in situations where media reps give you the toughest time. It was actually at San Jose State. And you just want to, when you want to deal with some of those media reps, oof, they make your life so hard. So when you have like media reps who really understand your job, really know what you're supposed to do, it makes everyone's life so much easier. So really cool gig, really dealing a lot with handing out media notes, helping out the PR team, with their archives and their stats. Because, so when you see SportsCenter and you see all these like NHL accounts tweet, a lot of their stats actually get directly pulled from the teams directly, because we hold the archives for all those kind of stats and records. So it's a really cool gig, and you get to go into the locker rooms, you get to be really close to the players, you get to be close to the ice, you get all access all around the arena. Definitely a really cool gig.
Very cool. You also have on your resume production assistant, Pac-12 Network in San Francisco. Very quickly, what'd you do for them?
Yeah, that was actually the first job I got out of grad school. It was really a lot of similar things that I was doing over at NBC Sports. A lot of it was just building highlights and building shot sheets for our shows. So Saturdays were like the days where I was going in like at noon, leaving at midnight, because we got Pac-12 football all day long. And the Pac-12 loves to run those late night games, so we're there for a long time. And so a lot of it's just building different highlights for different shows. So like I'd cut like a short like 30-second highlight of Stanford versus Cal for like our morning show or like our pregame show for like a 3 p.m. game. Then, for example, for the post game show, they want to do it's like an hour show. They probably want that 30-second highlight to be like a 2 minute and 30-second highlight. So it's my responsibility to watch the game, cut everything that I think is important that deserves to be into the show. And then while I also do that, also write down a shot sheet for our talent to help them during the show. So football, a little bit easier. But once we got into basketball season where you got 1 point games and, back and forth games, that affects the story of your highlight significantly. And if you don't have an EVS machine and you're just cutting it with people, those end of games can become very, very stressful to get into the show and into the rundown in time.
And it is as exciting, as tiring, and as fulfilling as you just described it. It was fun. And you're at that age where you can have all the fun you want, brother. I'm all for you doing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of stress. But if there's nothing like submitting in that highlight and there's no mistakes in it and you just get that good job from your producer, that was tough to do.
Very cool. When you were in grad school at Syracuse, you also had a chance to work directly with ESPN. Talk about that.
Yeah, now this was a really, really cool experience. And this is what really actually kind of pushed me more towards production for now. We have a real life studio at Syracuse University. It's a state-of-the-art studio, completely automated. It's actually the same studio system we run over at NBC Sports where I'm at now. So we got to deal with a lot of cool technology over there. And while I was over at ESPN, we basically had this program. It wasn't really a class. It was basically you walking in, and you start as just viewing like how the production works. Our director, Olivia Stomsky, she's awesome. I love her. She runs the whole pre and post game for ESPN ACC Network Extra. And this is just a great opportunity to be able to produce your own shows, direct your own shows with all the power. Really get those reps you can't honestly get in the real world until you put a solid like 5 to 7 years as a production assistant. So being able to just work your ranks up in an accelerated manner. By the end of the year over there at Syracuse, I was producing my own lacrosse shows, my own basketball shows, literally just building a rundown from scratch like 4 days earlier into the week, doing research, what stats pop out, look who Syracuse is playing. I had to teach myself like lacrosse, so that was pretty interesting. I was learning lacrosse and literally producing lacrosse shows, even though I had never watched a game of lacrosse before I went to Syracuse. So really cool experience to kind of do something different, right? I know most of the sports that we cover, right? But lacrosse, so it was really a different experience, and it really opened my eyes to how production really works. Really cool experience, and I really miss it because now you gotta go back into the real world. You got to go back down to square one. Back when I was producing shows, I know I can do it, but you got to move back down in the real world.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that you worked in Los Angeles for the CNN bureau down there, and the national correspondent, Sara Sidner, who was our Hearst Award winner several years ago.
Yes.
And I recommended you to her, and she said, well, if he's willing to work hard, let's get him on board. And apparently you had a very good experience. Can you imagine working for CNN during this year of 2020 when Black Lives Matter started to break out all over the country as a protest?
I bet it's hectic. I bet it's insane. It's a lot of pressure to get everything right because that media is just so scrutinized now. When I went over there back in 2016, it was also a pretty crazy year to be at CNN. Probably the craziest year to be at CNN because that was the first year of the Trump presidency. And that's when the attacks really started ramping up, and we never really saw a president attack media organizations the way that our current president did. And so it was just really, really interesting to be able to work there and to see how they react, how that affects their coverage. Honestly, it doesn't really affect their coverage, but it's just interesting to see how the response is to it. And I was actually in the newsroom when Trump was making his speech about Charlotte, when he said there's very fine people on both sides. I was there live in the newsroom when he was saying that, when all of our correspondents had our eyes on the TVs looking at what he was saying. And it was a scene. It was a scene that I'll definitely not forget. There was kind of like a collective gasp because that was one of the first times we really heard our president say something really, really like out there. And so it was really polarizing to kind of be in that CNN newsroom while that was being said. And it was a great experience, don't get me wrong, but yeah, for sure, a much different feel to being there in 2016 versus probably being there before.
Now, fast forward to 2020 when we had the horrible experience with George Floyd, being killed in Minneapolis, triggering all that national protest, international
Yeah.
protests. Talk to me a little bit about the way sports, college as well as professional, have been dealing with this issue.
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen it. It's been we haven't seen social justice like this in sports, I think, really ever. We've seen it before. There have been social justice statements made before, of course, and when sports have been used as a platform for these athletes before. I mean, look at San Jose State with John Carlos and Tommy Smith, right? Got our
Exactly.
statues up there. That
Exactly.
was a statement being made. And that was many decades ago, right? Now, I think more than ever. Literally, 2 weeks ago, we saw the Milwaukee Bucks not take the basketball court. We've never seen anything
That
like
was
that.
bizarre, but it
Not
was,
even show up to the game. Like, we've never seen anything like that before. Statements were being made, and then that triggered literally almost every single sport to cancel games that day. It was something, and so I think we've definitely seen social justice be pushed like very, very forward in the world of sports, and we're seeing more and more people who aren't really afraid. I think used to be kind of this taboo of, you saw with Colin Kaepernick, he made a stand in 2016, and after the season, he still doesn't have a job, and he was definitely better than many backup quarterbacks in the league. I think we can all agree on that.
mhm.
And so just to see, I think athletes are kind of scared to make a stand and say something after that, because like, oh man, I can lose my job. Look at Colin Kaepernick. But I think as of 2020, I think the athletes say, no, enough is enough. Like, I don't even care anymore at this point. This is so much more important to the real world and to the future. And so we've seen sports really, really participate in social justice and opening up that dialogue and using their platform to shine light on Black Lives Matter and social justice issues.
And it's amazing. You and I are doing this interview during the weekend of the first weekend of opening games of the National Football League in 2020. Some of us are concerned about two things. One, will COVID-19 bring it to a grinding halt in just a few weeks? We have to wait and see because of the spread of the virus. And then the other thing is, how legitimate is this for the leagues to finally be getting on board with Black Lives Matter when players have been talking about this and demonstrating their concern for years? I look at the commissioner of the National Football League, and I'm happy that he's finally on board, but it took something this horrible to wake their eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why for a lot of people, it might come off as like disingenuous, the efforts they're putting in, because so much has happened before. We saw that whole saga with Colin Kaepernick, just a really bad stain on the NFL. And you see they're trying to take steps to improve. What's good is we see progress. They understand there's a problem and they're willing to address it. That wasn't the case 4 years ago. It might feel like it was many years ago. It was really only 4 years ago. It's not that long ago. And so now they're starting to take a stand. There is progress, but I can totally see why some people might find the NFL's move kind of a little disingenuous. Like, they don't want to be left out. They don't want to be that league who didn't make a stand. It was only 3 years ago they made that rule where you can either stay in the locker room or you have to come out and stand during the national anthem. That was a rule. You would get fined if you didn't do that. So I'm glad they scrapped that, as we saw yesterday. Many athletes took a stand. They knelt, or some teams didn't even come out of the locker room before. So there's definitely progress. But yeah, depending on the league, each league is at a certain juncture when it comes to social justice reform.
And when you go cover that in the future, you're going to have to talk to them on different levels, not only about can you play the sport, but also you have to talk to them about the humanity of it all. Are the players being appreciated as human beings? And with all of the issues that are continuing to bubble up, plus COVID-19, you're going to have a lot of work to do in the future. Let's take a look at some of your work. You mind if I screen share here for a second?
Go for it. It's all you.
You gave me some examples that we can show some folks, and I was impressed with this story. I'm going to play this, and we'll talk a little bit about it. I'll play the beginning excerpt of it.
Let's go for it.
65% of adults, so that's 18 and over, experience digital eye strain.
We're all guilty of it, looking at our phones for long periods of time. We know it's bad for us, but why is it so difficult for us to put the phone down? Psychologist Professor Christine Bacho says that the reason we can't put the phone down is because we're lonely. Studies show that the loneliest demographic used to be the elderly, but that has recently changed.
Now we have young people who are not isolated, feeling lonely, and that tells us that in a way our smartphones are our best friends and our worst enemies. It's like two sides of the same coin.
If you keep looking at your phone screen for too long during the day, it's almost certain that you'll end up wearing a pair of glasses. Optical specialist Renee Krakar says the blue light from cell phones is what damages your retinas because it's the only light that reaches the back of your eyes. There's a couple of ways to protect your eyes while using your smartphone.
Every 20 minutes, look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That's to help with digital eye strain. Gets you up, gets you focusing farther out. If you experience issues, go see your optometrist, your ophthalmologist, whoever examines your eyes.
With technology continuing to improve, experts believe that eyesight will become worse.
It'll be interesting to see. I think you'll see more people in glasses.
And that's the kind of story I used to do when I was a medical reporter. So congratulations, sir. You've got a new career coming.
Oh man, and I'll never forget that class I was in. Basically, it was just a news reporting. It was called News Reporting 2. It was our introduction to television news reporting. And basically, the way that class worked is you have your story. Our story day is on Tuesday. Everyone has to do their story on Tuesday. There's no ifs and ors about it. You have to do it on Tuesday. Your deadline is 11:59 on Tuesday. If you don't get it in, you get a 0. Simple as that. And so just the stress of finding a story, getting your pitch approved by the professor, and then just making calls, because we couldn't do any campus stories. We had to go into the city of Syracuse. And so making all these calls to like eye doctors and optometrists and just trying to get someone to talk to you. And you're just a student, so sometimes you're like, I'm busy. Just a lot of PTSD from that class, trust me. But very rewarding class, and definitely helps you with your reporting.
And I think that's what students need to know in school now. You're going to ramp up in your career to levels of accomplishment and expediency and hard work like you've never seen before. And you can't resist it in college because it'll hurt you later in your career.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, when I was at San Jose State, I know when I was doing update, I do a lot of campus stories, and I would be taking a lot of shortcuts. And that class is difficult when you really 100% put your effort into it and put your full heart and your soul into your stories. It's a difficult class. Luckily, we were able to do campus stories. We're supposed to do campus stories because it's update news. So it made it a little bit easier. But I think for me, at least, the transition from, just doing campus stories and when I went to Syracuse and I had to report on the city of Syracuse and talk to these strangers, talk to local officials, it was very different. And that's because it would have been easier maybe if I worked a little harder in update to try to get out my stories. I would have been less nervous calling these people. I would have been more confident in my reporting abilities. But it just all comes back to, your habits and everything. And so, I mean, my reporting skills definitely improved. I don't know if I see myself being an MMJ reporter, because that is just one grinding job. You got to grind if you want to be, and you got to love what you do if you want to be MMJ.
You better indeed. And
Yeah.
I've been telling you for the last few months, hold on to your hair while you still have it, because this industry can work havoc on you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to bring up is something that the students are dealing with right now in September 2020. Many are feeling pressured by social media issues and the cancel culture and all of those things. And then you have, I can't come to campus because of COVID. I can't really have a social life. We won't have a graduation ceremony like we normally would. We don't even have the opportunity to party and have a good time. You were in a fraternity when you were at San Jose State.
It was.
How do you talk students, or what would you say to students today about this is a dilemma? It is extraordinary, but take it as a learning experience because the future is going to bring a lot more surprises.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of disheartening to see all these mass gatherings around the country, and with the younger generation, like my generation, and people younger than me. It is disheartening because we're all in this together, honestly. And I know you're in college. I know it's the 4 best years of your life. You want to party, you want to drink, you want to have fun. But right now is just not the time. And the faster we all recognize this issue, and we're all in it together, we all work to finally get over this, the faster you can go back to drinking, the faster you can go back to partying. It's tough though, and it's annoying too, because also you have a lot of younger people like, oh, it's the end of the world, but you know, they haven't really been affected by this. There's people out there who've lost jobs. There's people out there who can't put, you know, food on the table because of this pandemic. And I bet it's so disheartening for them to turn on the TV and see a decent faction of people say, "Oh, the flu kills more people. Oh, it's not that deadly. This is just a cough." It's frustrating, and we're so deep down the line. You know, 200,000 people have almost died in this country alone from this disease, and there's still people not taking it seriously, and it's tough. I mean, we all want to party. We all want to go back to watching sporting events again, right? I definitely want to. I'm dying to go to a stadium and watch a game, but we just have to recognize that this is a team effort, and you know, we're Republican, you know, white, Jewish, Muslim, go for it, whatever it is. We're all in this together. We're all Americans. We all need to just rally together and just buckle down for these next several months. And if we do a good job of that, I'm sure we'll get over this hump. And like you said, we have so many issues down the line that we haven't even heard of. And they're coming, right? Because the world's not a perfect place. And so we can use this pandemic, you know, we haven't done a great job, but we can use this as a learning experience for whatever problems that we're going to face in the future.
Great wisdom, Keanu, Haghighi, I must say. And I will say to you also, yes, college was thought to be the best years of our lives until you get that paycheck in the future and you're working towards your passion. Trust me, you're going to love that part of your life too, if not more so.
Just getting started with it, but we took a little break, but hopefully we get back to it soon.
Oh, you will. You will. Thank you for taking this time. I'll be rooting for you, certainly passing the word that anybody who wants to hire a hardworking, creative young mind who understands the values of a workplace means teamwork and also frustration, stress, deadlines, but joy and passion. You're the guy. You're the guy.
Thank you so much, Bob. You're too kind to me, honestly.